everybody here. Thanks for coming. I know you're all busy getting ready for the holidays and Thanksgiving coming up. We've had Jeff Snow here a few times now with his Celtic music. So he'll be playing Celtic music, telling some stories, some Celtic stories, and he'll be mixing in some Christmas music as well. So I hope you enjoy, and let's welcome Jeff Snow.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you all for coming out today. It's a lovely time. And it's a lovely ride up here, so it is. I left here one night in a snowstorm and had to get back to 91. That wasn't quite as much fun. Yeah, here we go. Near Bainbridge Town in the county down, one morning last July, down Holding Green came a sweet Colleen, smiled as she passed me by. She looked so neat from her two bare feet to the sheen of her nut brown hair. The coaxing elf had to pinch myself to be sure I was really there. From Bantry Bay to Derry Quay, from Galway to Dublin Town, no maid I've seen like the sweet Colleen that I met at the county down. As she onward sped, I shook me head, I gazed with a feeling queer. Then I said, says I, to a passer-by, who's the maid with the nut brown hair? Smiled at me with pride, says he, she's a gem of Ireland's crown. Young Rosie McGann, from the banks of the Bann, she's the spot of the county down. Bantry Bay to Derry Quay, from Galway to Dublin Town. No maid I've seen like the sweet Colleen, met at the county down. I traveled a bit, never was a hit till my roving career began. Fair and square, I surrendered there the charms of young Rose McCann. I'd a heart to let, no tenant yet did I meet with a shawl or a gown. In she went, I asked no rent from the spot of the county down. From Bantry Bay to Derry Quay, from Galway to Dublin Town, no maid I've seen like the sweet Colleen, met at the county down. Bantry Bay to Derry Quay, from Galway to Dublin Town. No maid I've seen like the sweet Colleen that I met at the county down. Thank you. first one was a traditional Irish tune called The Star of the County Down. Some of you were singing along under your masks. I could tell because the masks are on. I will be really, really glad when I don't have to sit in a room full of people wearing masks.
Yeah.
They told Christina, now that I'm back on the road after 18 months of looking out the window, I've got people calling me saying, "Will you come play with me? You have to wear a mask." You know, I'm not doing that. But, so that was the first one. The second one is a dual role. We know that at Christmas time, the child is this. The child is this, who laid to rest. And the rest of the year is green sleeves. The rhythm patterns are just a tiny bit different, but they're close enough that you can lay one right on top of the other. It works for multiple things. So I've played you an Irish one and I played you an English one. And if the tartan did not give it away, I'm a Scot. And I have Scots over there in the corner that I met today. So we are small but mighty. And this gives me the opportunity to play a Scottish one for you. And this song goes back for a ways. The genesis of it is in a very sad time in Scottish history in the mid-1800s. Most of the land in Scotland prior to the middle 1800s, or late 1800s, was owned by the feudal landowners. And they owned these huge, massive tracts, hundreds of thousands of acres of land scattered all about the northern half of Scotland. And those tracts of land were broken up into smaller pieces of land that they called crofts. And the crofts were anywhere from 2 to 5 to 10 acres. And a family would rent the croft and they would live on there and they would raise animals or crops. They would do something on the land in order to support themselves. And every year they would go back to the landowner and pay him a tax for the use of the land. And that worked really, really well for hundreds of years until the mid-1800s, when the landowners decided that having one big tract of land was worth a lot more money to them than having hundreds and thousands of small pieces of land. So what we need to do is get rid of the people that are crofting on our land. They engaged the British Army because the British Army at that time in history could be bought. They could be paid to help you do your dirty work, so to speak. So the British Army came in and they chased the crofters off the land. Those that refused to leave were killed. Some went away nicely. Many were rounded up and taken to the coast and then put on ships, and the ships were sent away. They were exiled to Scotland. And those ships came across the ocean. Many of them landed up north of here in what we call the maritime provinces of Canada. And that is why if you go up into the maritime provinces of Canada today, you'll find a lot of people of Scottish descent up there. That's how they got there. Some of the ships came across and they went up to Cape Fear River into the port of Wilmington, North Carolina. Those people got off the ships and they went up into the Appalachian Mountains because the topography of the Appalachian Mountains is very similar to the topography of the Highlands of Scotland, so they felt like home there. And that is why if you go up into the Appalachian Mountains today, you will find a lot of people of Scottish descent up there. That's how they got there. And that's how I ended up here. My great-grandparents came over in the Highland Clearances. And they settled in Terriffill, Connecticut, which is part of Simsbury, Connecticut. It's kind of halfway between Springfield and Hartford, tucked into the woods down there. And that's how I got here. Excuse me. Well, as with so many things that happen in Scottish history and all Celtic history, somebody writes a song about it, and that's how they record the history. Hush, hush, time to be sleeping. Hush, hush, dreams come creeping. Dreams of peace and of freedom. Don't cry in your sleep, Bonnie babe. Once our valleys were ringing with the sounds of the children singing. Now cheaply, late in the evening, she lie empty and broken. Hush, hush. Time to be sleeping, hush, hush. Dreams come creeping, dreams of peace and of freedom. Don't cry in your sleep, Bonnie babe. We stood with heads bowed in prayer while factors laid the cottages bare. The flames, the fires, the clear mountain air, many were dead by the morning. Hush, hush, time to be sleeping, hush, hush, dreams come creeping, dreams of peace and of freedom. Don't cry in your sleep, Bonnie babe. Where was us our proud island metal, our men once so feared in battle, now stand cowed, huddled like cattle, waiting to be shipped o'er the ocean. No use pleading or praying, now gone, gone, tucked away. Hush, hush, anchors away. Don't cry in your sleep, Bonnie babe. Oh, 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 hush, hush, time to be sleeping, hush, hush, dreams come creeping, dreams of peace and of freedom. Don't cry in your sleep, Bonnie babe. That was cheery, eh?
Yeah.
No, this is the way it was back then. We tend to think of Celtic music as, you know, the Irish drinking song where you're banging a glass on the bar and stomping your feet and the fiddle tunes that roll by at 180 beats a minute. And there's a lot of that. But there's a lot of other stuff too. And those things are all great and they're all celebration things. But the reality of it, most of the time, is sometimes different. And that leads me to this one. This one I don't play all year, but I tend to drag it out at Christmas time. It's not really a Christmas song. It's not really a Christmas song. And most of you probably won't know this one. But my friend from England will probably know this one. This was written by an English folk singer, probably in the very late 60s or very early 70s, a man named Ralph McTell. Ralph McTell wrote this song. And it's about just things in London, in society in London. And I play it at Christmas time because it makes me think about those who are less fortunate than I am. And things that we need to, at this time of year, things that are kind of important to keep in your head. He calls this song The Streets of London. Have you seen the old man in the closed down market, kicking up the paper with his worn out shoes? In his eyes you'll see no pride, held loosely at his side are yesterday's papers telling yesterday's news. How can you tell me you're lonely and say for you that the sun doesn't shine? Let me take you by the hand and lead you through the streets of London. I'll show you something, maybe you change your mind. Have you seen the old gal who walks the streets of London? Dirt in her hair and her clothes all in rags. No time for talking, just keeps right on walking, carrying her home into carrier bags. How can you tell me you're lonely? Say for you that the sun no longer shines. Let me take you by the hand, lead you through the streets of London. I'll show you something to make you change your mind. Have you seen the old man outside the Seaman's Mission? Memories fading like the ribbons that he wears. In our winter city, the rain cries little pity for one more forgotten hero in a world that doesn't care. How can you tell me you're lonely? Say for you that the sun doesn't shine. Let me take you by the hand, lead you through the streets of London. I'll show you something to make you change your mind. Not Christmassy, not directly Christmassy, but it makes you stop and think for a minute.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing to do this time of year. All right. This one's a little more Christmassy. Okay, now comes part of the fun part for me. This one I don't get to do a lot. This one gets played when there's young ones in the audience. Sometimes there are, and sometimes there aren't. But there's a few today, so I'm going to play one for them. You can sing along if you know it. You might. Some of you might know parts of it. This was written by a man named Tom Paxton. If you're familiar with folk singers and things like that, you're familiar with Tom Paxton. So what I did is I took a fairly popular Tom Paxton folk song and I kind of twisted the words just a little bit to make it work at Christmas time. So wherever he is right now, he lives in Northern Virginia, so wherever he is right now, when I do this, he gets a little pain right over here. He doesn't quite know why. Someday I'll write him a letter and say, thanks. You guys ready back there? Ready? One Christmas morning I awoke, a happy little boy. Found my father had for me a marvelous little toy. A wonder to behold it was, with many colors bright. And the moment I laid eyes on it, it became my heart's delight. It went zip and it moved and stopped and it stood still. I never knew just what it was, and I guess I never will. Well, the first time that I picked it up, I had a big surprise. Right on its bottom were two big buttons, and they looked like two green eyes. I first pushed one, then the other, then I twisted its lid. When I set it down again, this is what it did. It went zip, it moved and stopped and it stood still. I never knew just what it was, and I guess I never will. Well, it first marched left, and it then marched right, and it then marched under a chair. When I looked around again, it wasn't even there. I started to sob, and my daddy laughed. He knew that I would find. When I turned around, that marvelous toy came to chugging from behind. It went zip, and it moved, and when it stopped, and it stood still. I never knew just what it was, and I guess I never will. The years have gone by too quickly, it seems, and I have my own little boy. And yesterday I gave to him that marvelous little toy. His eyes really popped right out of his head and gave a squeal of glee. Neither one of us knows what it is. He loves it just like me, and it still goes zip and it moves. Don't stop, but it stood still. I never knew just what it was, and I guess I never will. Thank you for indulging me. In 1851, a young man named Michael Considine was born in County Clare, Ireland. He was born in a wee little village that doesn't exist anymore. The place was called, back then, it was called Spancel Hill. And Spancel Hill does not exist anymore, except as a dot on the map. What was there is now gone. But in 1851, it was kind of a thriving place. Michael Considine was born, and as he grew up and went through his early parts of his life, he realized, as so many Irish young lads do, that there was no future for him in Ireland. There was nothing going on there. There was a potato famine and all that. And there was just no future. So he needed to do something with himself. He needed to go someplace else, and that someplace else for most of them was America. And he came here. He came across the ocean, and he settled in Boston. He came to the port of Boston and stayed there for about a year before he realized that there was not much future for him in Boston, because there were a lot of Irish lads in Boston looking for work, and there wasn't enough work to support all of them. So he did his homework, and he shot across the country, because he had heard the prosperity that was going on in San Francisco. Remember, they had just had the gold rush and all of that out there. And San Francisco was kind of a prosperous place. So off he went to San Francisco, and Michael Considine spent the rest of his life in San Francisco. He died in San Francisco, and he's buried in San Francisco. He died in 1873 at the age of 22. History does not tell us what Michael Considine died of. That was not recorded. But history does tell us this. When Michael Considine was dying, he knew that he was dying. He was sick. He had some ailment, and he knew he was sick, and he knew he was not going to survive. And that made him very sad, primarily because one of the marks of the immigrants when they came, especially the Irish immigrants, was to come to America and to make enough money to go back to Ireland and visit. Because having enough resources to go back means that you were successful in the new land. And he knew that he was never going to get to go back, and he was never going to see his family again, and they were never going to see him or his success again. And that made him very sad. Not long before he died, Michael Considine had a dream one night, and in his dream, he went back to his village. He went back to Spancel Hill. And he got to see his friends and his family and his neighbors, and he visited the house that he grew up in, and all of those things that he would have done had he been able to come back there. He did in his dream. When he woke up in the morning, he remembered the dream, and he wrote it down, wrote all those things down. And he turned them into a poem before he died. This is Michael Considine's poem. It's called Spancel Hill. Last night as I lay dreaming of pleasant days gone by, my mind was set on rambling to errands I to fly. I stepped aboard a vision and I sailed off with a will, till we gladly came to anchor at the cross on Spancel Hill. Being the 23rd of June, the day before the fair, errand sons and daughters, they were all assembled there. The young, the old, the stout and the bold, they came to sport and kill. It's a curious combination at the fair on Spancel Hill. I went to see my old home, as every stone could tell. The old boarding was just the same, the apple trees over the well. I missed my sister Ellen, my brothers Pat and Bill. There only were strange faces at the house on Spancel Hill. I went to see my neighbors to hear what I might say. The old were getting feeble, the young ones turning gray. I met with Taylor Quigley, he brave as ever still. He used to mend my breeches when I lived on Spancel Hill. I took a flying visit to my first and only love. She's pure as any lily, she's gentle as a dove. She threw her arms around me, saying, Michael, I love you still. She's Pat the ranger's daughter, she's the pride of Spancel Hill. I stooped to kiss her, as I did in days of yore. She said, Michael, you're only joking, as you often were before. The cock crew in the morning, he crew both loud and shrill. I awoke in California, far, far from Spancel Hill. My vision faded, and tears came to my eyes. I hoped to see that dear old land once more before I die. May the joyous King of Angels his choicest blessings spill Thank you. You are, because you keep coming.
Yeah, we keep coming back.
They're looking at me. You don't count. Anybody else? Yeah? Middle school.
I can't play it.
Well, it was a middle school teacher's instrument of a generation of most of us in this room. And they played it on a table or cart that they rolled around. It was meant to be strung like that. And it didn't sound anything at all like that, but that was the idea behind it. And it didn't last very long. But what I do is, I'm a Scot, and we look at things and say, there has to be a harder way to do this. It would be really easy to just, this is what the Carter family did. You do stuff like that. And that's really cool, and that's the way it was designed to be played. But you lose all the other parts of the instrument when you do that. So, those of you who play different stringed instruments, and there's probably a few of you here, the guitar, the banjo has 4 or 5 strings, the guitar has 6 strings, and you try and finger pick that, and you go, how do you figure out where those strings are? There's 37 on the upper harp. So it takes a while to figure out where all the strings and everything is. But, anyway, let's give it a go and see what happens. breaking out. And over on the west coast of Scotland, a region kind of southwest of Glasgow, if you're in Scotland, a region known as Argyll. And the region of Argyll is a town in the middle of Argyll called Campbellton. And there was a man in Campbellton, Scotland, and his name was George McIntyre. And George was a young man, and he did as so many other young men did. He went off and he joined the British Army to fight the Great War. He was not there very long before he was captured and held in a prisoner of war camp in Germany for the duration of the war. When he was back in Campbellton, he was a member of the Campbellton Village Bagpipe Band. Every village in Scotland still to this day has their own little bagpipe band. And he was the one, he was in the Campbellton one. So when he was in captivity, being captured, he kind of kept playing his bagpipe tunes over and over again in his head to keep himself sane and think of his village and maybe I can get home someday. And then he wrote a bagpipe tune. And he called it The Hills of Argyll. And that tune is become part of the standard bagpipe repertoire in the United Kingdom. If you go and hear bagpipes, you will hear this one every now and again. It's called The Hills of Argyll. me try something. And this one I don't play a lot. And when I play it, you'll know why. Because it goes really quickly. And if you think it's hard to play 37 strings slowly, try playing them fast. If you notice, when I play the auto harp, I never look at my right hand, ever. I look at my left hand because each button that I push down gives me a different set of chords to choose from. So I have to make sure I'm on the right button, but I never look at my right hand because then I just have to start to figure out where the strings are, and you can't do it that fast. You can't. So I just look at my left hand and hope for the best. Most of the time it works. This is another bagpipe tune. This one comes from 1700s or so. In the Jacobite Rebellion, and it was something that they went off to fight the English. The Scottish army went off, and they were led by 100 bagpipers in the battle. So think for a moment, if you're the British soldiers, you wait for the Scots to come attack you, and here comes 100 guys playing bagpipes over the hill. That by itself ought to make you turn around and run. So they wrote a tune, they call it 100 Pipers. So if you're familiar with bagpipe music, this is 100 Pipers. But as with so many things that happen in the Celtic music world, many of the melodies, many of the tunes have a different name depending upon which part of the United Kingdom you're in. The songs just have different names. For example, the song that pretty much everybody knows is Loch Lomond. You take the high road and I'll take the low road. Pretty much everybody learned that somewhere along the way. If you go to Ireland, they call it Red is the Rose. And so the 100 Pipers, if you go to Ireland, I can't do this with a straight face, I'm sorry. In Ireland, they call this tune, The Hair Fell Off My Coconut. I have no idea what they were thinking about when they said that. I promise before I'm done I will come back to the harp. Yeah, I'm all tangled up here. That's a little Scottish ditty called Callum's Road. Callum's Road. Callum's Road is named after Malcolm MacLeod, and Callum is a short version or a nickname for people named Malcolm over in the British Isles. And Callum MacLeod lived up on the Isle of Raasay, which is off the west coast of Scotland. It's kind of southwest-ish, south-northeast-ish, I'm sorry, of Scotland. And it was a small little island. They had a big quarry there for a long time, through the 17, 18, early 1900s. This quarry was very prosperous, and there were several hundred families that lived on the Isle of Raasay. And then in the 1940s, early 1950s, the quarry went out of business, and most of the people left. So they were There was a small spattering of people in the southern half of the island in a little village. And then there was Callum MacLeod and his wife and another couple that lived up in the northern part of Versailles. And the only way to, and so the ferry came into the southern part, and if you wanted to get to the northern part, you pretty much had to walk because there was no road. And they kept saying to the government, could you just build a road up to this little village up here? And they said, there's only 2 families up there, we're not building a road. And they went through this, as you can imagine, dealing with the government for years and years and years and years and years. And finally, being a Scot, Callum said, well, if they don't build a road, I'll build a road. So Callum MacLeod went out and he got his wheelbarrow, his axe, and a shovel, and spent 10 years, every day for 10 years, building the road to go to the north part of the island. And that road is now known in Scotland as Callum's Road, and the tomb was written to commemorate it. That was just kind of a cool thing to put there. So it was, and it goes along the edge of the cliffs, and if you're not careful, you'll fall into the ocean, and it's really, really high. Does this sound a little loud to you? It's hard for me to tell. No, you can hear okay? You can hear me over it? Okay. You're hearing it differently than I'm hearing it. It just sounds a little loud to me, so I'll try and play it quietly. Let us go back to Argyll. You remember, we visited George McIntyre over in Argyll when he wrote The Hills of Argyll over in World War II time. And we're going to go back there. It was a Scottish folk band, very popular through the 70s and 80s, and probably in the very early 90s, called Silly Wizard. That one should ring a bell with a couple of people maybe. And they were fronted by a man named Andy Stewart. If you're familiar with Silly Wizard, then you're familiar with Andy Stewart. And you can keep nodding, because if I tell these people that Andy Stewart had one of those voices that if you hear it once, you'll know it everywhere you go forever and ever. He was just a great folk singer, a great writer, and unfortunately he died about 3 years ago. He had some surgery for something and it didn't go well, and the surgical accident it kind of finished him off. But it was really very sad. But Andy Stewart is great a folk singer and great as all the things he was with his band. He was a great songwriter. And I will not play what I'm going to tell you today because it just would make me too sad. But it's the saddest song I've ever heard. And if you're looking sometime, you just want to hear a really sad song, YouTube is your friend, and the song is called Where Are You Tonight, I Wonder. You've heard the song. Yeah. And Where Are You Tonight, I Wonder. And just get a box of Kleenex and sit by your computer and listen to that. But he also wrote this one. This is one that takes us back to Argyll. Silly Wizard was on tour. And they went over to Argyll, and they were in that area for a while, from village to village. And Andy Stewart met a young lady there. And he became quite smitten with her. Unfortunately, she did not become quite smitten with him. Just the way that it worked out. But that did not stop him from writing a song for her. A song about how he was going to return to Argyll, and he was going to get her one way or the other. Andy Stewart calls this song the Queen of Argyll. Gentlemen, it is my duty to inform you of one beauty, though I'd ask of you a favor, not to seek her for a while, though I own she's a creature of character and feature, but no words could paint the picture of the Queen of all Argyll. And if you could have seen her there, boys, if you had just been there, the swan was in her movements, the morning in her smile, all the roses in the garden. Bow and ask her pardon, but no one could paint the picture of the Queen of all Argyll. On the evening that I mentioned, I passed with light intention through a part of our dear country, known for beauty and good style, in a place of noble thinkers, scholars and great drinkers, but above them all for splendor, show the Queen of all Argyll. And if you could have seen her there, boys, if you had just been there, the swan morning in her smile, all the roses in the garden. Bow and ask her pardon, but no choose not to grieve you, though indeed when I deceive you, I'll see you in a while. I must find some way to gain her, to court her and to tame her, though I fear my heart's in danger, and queen of all our God. And if you would have seen her there, boys, if you had just been there, the swans and her movements, the morning and her smile, all the roses in the garden, bow and ask her pardon, but no woman could paint the picture of the queen of all our God. We have come to the part that you have been waiting for almost an hour. You just didn't know it. And now you do. This is the point where you get to sing for me. And from my perspective, it's a whole lot more fun to watch when you don't have to wear masks. Because now people, they always see the fronts of the masks moving. It's a little different. So, you're going to help me sing a song. And I will tell you the backstory because you figured out by now there's a backstory to just about everything. I am a Scot. And a year or two ago, I went out to the mailbox on my birthday, and in the mailbox from one of my sons was a DNA test kit. So I called him and I said, "What's the point to this?" And he said, "When we were growing up, you made us listen to Scottish music and Scottish folk songs and Scottish this and Scottish that, and we're plaid and all of it. So right now, I've decided we're going to find out exactly how Scottish you are." And I was okay with that because my uncle, my late uncle, was back in the days when you had to do ancestry by actually going there and looking things up in books. There were no computers, there was no internet. Actually did it, and they go back to he went back to the 1600s. So I've got all of this. I know where I came from. Sure, I'll take the test. So I took the test, and it came out that I'm 83% Scottish. That's pretty high. That is pretty high. So I'll take that. And Christmas is coming. My son's getting a DNA test for Christmas. And I'm going to find out exactly where he came from. That could be interesting, eh? But I grew up in a very, very Scottish household because my great-grandparents came from Scotland, and it was, everything was Scottish folk songs and Scottish music. A lot of things that you hear me play today are things that I learned as a wee lad when I was growing up. My father's name was Donald, and his best friend, who was also a Scot, was also named Donald. And quite often, Donald and Donald would get together in the home when I was growing up, and they would bring their friend Johnny Walker with them. You know Johnny Walker, do you? And Donald and Johnny Walker would get together, and they would play the Scottish folk songs, and they would dance and sing, and they would do all of those things. And then the night would roll on, and they would get to this one Scottish song that I knew that meant that this could go on for a long time. It's a song about a man named Donald. And this Donald lived up in the Isle of Skye, which is off the west coast of Scotland. It's probably the prettiest place you'll ever find. And Donald left the Isle of Skye and went visiting down in London one day on a vacation, on a holiday, wearing his kilt. And the people in London had never seen such a thing as a man wearing a kilt. So everywhere he went, they just kind of looked at him and said, "Donald, where are your trousers?" So they wrote a song about Donald and his lack of trousers. And we're going to sing that today, and you're going to help me. You can help me sing the chorus. I will sing the first line of the chorus, it's very short, and you will sing the second line of the chorus, which is also very short. Easy stuff. I will sing, "Let the wind blow high," and you will sing back to me, "Let the wind blow low." That's all you have to do. Let the wind blow high, let the wind blow low. You ready? Let the wind blow high.
Let the wind blow low.
Great. Take my kilt down low. All the lassies shout, "Hello, Donald, what are your trousers?" I'm down from the Isle of Skye, and I'm no very big, and I'm awful shy. The lassies shout, trousers. Let the wind blow high. Through the streets in my tip-top coat. All the lassies shout, hello, Donald, where are your trousers? Well, I went down to London town and I had some fun in the underground. The ladies turned their heads around saying, Donald, what are your trousers? Let the wind blow high. Through the streets in my tip-top coat. All the lassies shout, hello, Donald, where's your trousers? Well, the lassie took me to a ball. It was slippery in the hall, and I was afraid that I might fall, for I wasn't wearing trousers. Let the wind blow high. Through the streets in my tip-top coat. All the lassies shout, hello, Donald, what are your trousers? Well, the lassies want me, everyone. Let them catch me if they can. Can't put a piece on a Highland man, they won't wear no trousers. Let the wind blow high. Through the streets in my tip-top coat. All the lassies shout, hello, Donald, where's your trousers? They'll wear that kilt mighty right. It is not wrong, I know it's right. The Highlanders would get a fright if they saw me wearing trousers. Let the wind blow high. Through the streets in my tip-top coat. All the lassies shout, hello, Donald, where are your trousers? Let the wind blow high. Through the streets in my tip-top coat. All the lassies shout, hello, Donald, where's your trousers? I used to hear my mother say that a lot. Think on it for a minute. Okay, you did really well with that. You did so well that I'm going to reward you. Yes. We're going to do an Irish one, and you're going to help me with this one too. I'm going to give you the whole chorus this time. That's not you just a little piece of the chorus at a time. I'm going to give you the whole chorus of this one, and I'll do the rest of the song. Fair enough? This is your part. Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac, marry me. My father's making me Mary, Mary Mac. I'm gonna marry Mary, so my Mary to take care of me. We'll all be feeling merry when I marry Mary Mac. That's your part. I'll do the rest. You ready? You should have left when you had the chance. Here's what we'll do. I'll make it easy for you. I will sing Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. I can do that. You can sing back to me, my father's making me marry Mary Mac. My father's making me marry Mary Mac. Ready? Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. My father's making me marry Mary Mac. Do that. Ready? Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me.
My father's making me Mary Mac.
We're getting closer, but it's going to work better if you do it together. Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. My father's making me marry Mary Mac. Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me.
My father's making me Mary Mac.
I'm gonna marry Mary. I'm gonna marry to take care of you. Well, I'll be feeling married when I marry Mary Mac. Big break. Well, there was a last son, her name was Mary Mac. Make no mistake, she's a girl I want to talk. A lot of other fellas try to get up on her track. And I'm thinking that I'd have to get up early. Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. I'm gonna marry Mary. So I'm married to take care of you. Well, I'll be feeling married when I marry Mary Mac. Mary and her mother go an awful lot together. In fact, you hardly ever see the one without the other. And all the people wonder if it's Mary or her mother or the both of them together. It's important. Mary Mac's father's making Mary Mac marry me. I'm gonna marry Mary for the Mary to take care of you. Well, I'll be feeling married when I marry Mary Mac. Okay. Everybody was quiet. We're gonna take a detour. You're gonna help me with an Irish sea shanty. Sea shanties are the song that sailors used to sing to work in rhythm, pulling the ropes and sails and all that kind of stuff. You probably know this one, at least a lot of people. What do you do with a drunken sailor? What do you do with a drunken sailor? What do you do 1962, I think. Hollywood, California. The music department of a television studio was handed the pilot episode for a TV show. He said, write us some music to go with the pilot. They took Drunken Sailor. They moved a couple of notes around, just a few notes. They came up with this. Just right back and you'll hear a tale of a fateful trip. It started from this tropic port aboard this tiny ship. He was a 19 sailor man, skipper brave and cool. 5 passengers set sail that day for 3-hour tour. A 3-hour tour. Gilligan's Island and Drunken Sailor are the same thing. Now you know how we got here. What do you do with a drunken sailor? What do you do with a drunken sailor? What do you do with a drunken sailor? Lying on. Way hey up she rises. Way hey up she rises. Way hey up she rises. Lying on. Mary Mac's father make a Mary Mac marry me.
My God, make me merry, merry, merry.
I'm gonna marry Mary Mac. Carry me on. Alright, we're gonna do it one more time. We're gonna do it really loud because the people in Brattleboro are gonna be watching us on TV. So remember, we set the bar kind of high. It's gonna be just for them. Ready for the folks in Brattleboro. Mary Mac's father make a Mary Mac marry me.
My God is making me merry, merry, merry.
I'm gonna marry Mary Mac. Take care of you along with you, Mary Mac, Mary Mac. That was good. Good. Are you having fun this afternoon?
Yes. Yes.
So am I. So am I. I'm so happy to be back to work, back on the road. 18 months at home looking out the window. That was a long stretch of not being able to have fun and sing songs for people.
Yeah.
I first got paid to play the guitar. I was 15 years old. That was like 25 years ago. It's not funny. And now, I'm not 25 years old anymore. So, it's been a long time. So, I'm just happy to be back at it for a while. And we'll see where this takes us. This one is an English children's song in the 1500s. It's called The Elfin Knight. Elfin Knight, E-L-F-I-N-K-N-I-G-H-T. And as with so many things in the folk song world, as it kind of worked its way through the decades and the centuries, it morphs and it changes into something else. Let's see if you can figure out what this one turned into. A little more popular version of The Elfin Knight. The song that you know as Scarborough Fair began as The Elfin Knight, and over time it just kind of morphed and changed. And it's quite different, but it had 500 years to become quite different. But the internet is your friend, and if you Google The Elfin Knight, you find the original words from when they came out of the child's ballads of the 1500s. You will start reading them and you go, wow, this sounds a lot like Scarborough Fair. It's not exact, but you can certainly look at it and go, okay, this is how one started out. And the version that you're probably familiar with was the Paul Simon version. And what I like to call the one that I played is the Martin Carty version, because Martin Carty's the one that actually wrote the riff, the guitar part that you recognize as Paul Simon's guitar part. Paul borrowed that from Martin Carty. One of these days he's actually going to give him credit for it. And that hasn't happened yet. That's kind of sad. In 1855, a man named John Hunt left his family home in Ireland and came to the United States. He settled in Aberdeen, Maryland, which is just a wee bit north of Baltimore, Maryland. He got a job, he got married, he had children, and spent the rest of his life in Aberdeen, Maryland. John Hunt died in Aberdeen, Maryland, and John Hunt is buried in Aberdeen, Maryland. John Hunt never went back to Ireland, and he never saw his family again. As I tell you the story and sing you the song, please keep in mind that when John Hunt came here in 1855, he was 13 years old. 13 years old. So think about your 13-year-old child, your 13-year-old grandchild, niece, nephew, pick one, the kid down the street, leaving the country they were living in, going to a place where they knew nobody, knew nothing, they just knew that at 13 years old, they had to go someplace and find their way in the world and coming to a strange country. There was no internet back then. There were no telephones back then. There was no real form of communication back then, except for the annual family letter. And every year, John Hunt's father, Brian, would go next door. The schoolmaster in the village, a man named Pat McNamara, lived next door. Brian couldn't either read nor write, so he would go next door, and he would talk to Pat McNamara, and he would tell him all the comings and goings of the family. Who got married, who had children, who died, Think about all the things that we do today instantly with a text message of all things, which is, that technology still amazes me. I have a son who's the captain of a ship, and he can't tell me where he is most of the time. But I got 3 text messages from him this morning. I don't know exactly how all that works, but it does. So there was nothing but the annual family letter. And every letter ended with a request or a plea for John Hunt to come back and see his family again, because they missed him and they wanted to come back and see him and see if he had success in America. And he never did. Very sad. In the very early 1970s, a man named Peter Jones was cleaning out a house in Aberdeen, Maryland. And in that house, he found a pile of old papers. Those papers were the letters that had been written to John Hunt many, many years before. And he took those letters and he turned them into something that we call the Ballad of Kilkelly, Ireland, the true story of the Hunt family. Kilkelly, Ireland, 18 and 60, my dear and loving son John, your good friend the schoolmaster Pat McNamara, so good to write these words down. Your brothers have all gone to find work in England, the house is so empty and sad. The crop of potatoes is sorely infected, a third to a half of them bad. Your sister Bridget and Patrick O'Donnell are going to be married in June. Your mother says not to work on the railroad, be sure to come on home soon. Kilkelly, Ireland, 18 and 70, my dear and loving son John. Hello to your missus, to your 4 children, may they grow healthy and strong. Our Michael has got in a wee bit of trouble, I don't think that he'll ever learn. Because of the dampness, there's no turf to speak of, we have nothing to burn. Bridget is happy and ain't a child for her, you know, she's got 6 of her own. You say you found work, you don't say what kind, when are you coming home? Kilkelly, Ireland, 18 and 80, Michael and John, my sons, I'm sorry to give you the very sad news, your mother is gone. We buried her down at the church in Kilkelly, your brothers and Bridget were there. You don't have to worry, she died very quickly, remember her in your prayers. It's so good to hear that Michael's returning, with money he's sure to buy land. The crop has been poor and the people are selling at any price that they can. Kilkelly, Ireland, 18 and 90, my dear and loving son John. I suppose that I must be close on to 80, 30 years you've been gone. Because of all of the money you sent me, I'm still living out on my own. Michael has built himself a fine house, Bridget's daughters have grown. Thank you for sending your family picture, their lovely young woman and man. Why don't you think about coming to visit? A joy to see you again. Kilkelly, Ireland, 18 and 92, my dear brother John. I'm sorry I didn't died sooner to tell you that father's passed on. He was living with Bridget, she said he was cheerful, healthy right up to the end. You should have seen him play with the grandchildren of Pat McNamara, your friend. We buried him alongside of Mother down at the Kilkelly churchyard. He was a strong and feisty old man, considering his life was so hard. It's funny the way he kept talking about you. He called for you at the end. Why don't you think about coming to visit? We'd all like to see you again. Thank you. Over the years, over many years, that song has kind of attached itself to me. And it is one that gets played every day, no matter where I am. Part of the reason that it has attached itself to me is this. I have had the opportunity many years ago to see the original letters. And I had enough time with them, I was given enough time, that I could sit with a laptop and transcribe them, more or less. Remember that the paper was old and brittle and yellow and it cracked and the ink had smudged, and it was also written in the old English style of writing. Like, remember Shakespeare, when you got all done reading Shakespeare and you had no idea at all what you just read? Some of it's a bit like that. And some of it I couldn't make out, and some of it didn't make any sense to me, and there were some places I just had to leave blanks because I couldn't even guess if it was supposed to be there. But I have transcriptions of the letters. There's about 22 in the series of letters. And if you go to my website, and there's cards over there with a website address and stuff on them. If you go to my website, there is a page for Kilkelly, Ireland on the website. And if you just Google Kilkelly, Ireland letters, I will be the thing that pops up. And you're not going to get pages and pages and pages. I will be the thing that pops up. And because of that, I hear from people all over the world. They hear the song, they hear the story, they want to read the letters. The first and last letter are on the website. I have a PDF file, which is the kind of thing that you can zip around the internet really quickly, of all 22 letters that I'm happy to send to anybody that wants to read them. So if you have any interest at all in this, just send me an email, tell me you met me up here in this beautiful little village in Vermont. And we'd love to read the letters, and I'll be happy to send you the file. Make yourself a cup of tea and sit down and try and find your way through them and hear the story of the family. It's really very interesting. About 7 years ago, I had an email one day from a gentleman in a small town just outside of Atlantic City, New Jersey. And he had Googled Kilkelly letters, and I popped up, and would I be so kind as to send him the letters, and of course I did. Almost immediately I got a response from him. Remember the part of the song about Michael Hunt, the brother who went away and got in trouble and then came back and built a house and kind of straightened himself out and all that? This is Michael Hunt's great-grandson. The family knew of the letters, obviously knew of the song, but they had no idea at all what the letters said. But now they have the transcription of the letters, and it kind of brings their family history back into perspective for them. The pictures on the Kilkelly page on the website come from him. He sent me pictures of the family gravestone, there's some different things on the website, which makes it really very interesting. So if you have any interest at all in things like that, please take advantage of it. It has been great fun for me to come back here, and thank you so much, Christine, for bringing me back here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I get emails from Christine saying, "We're not tired of you yet, can you come back?" Or something to that effect. And I said, "Yeah, because when I come up here, you always got food." So I make a little bag of food, and I stick it in the front seat of the car, and I can drive home, and I'm really happy with that. I'm going to play a couple more on the other harp. Before I do that, there are different ways you can continue to hear the music. You can find me on Pandora, Spotify, iTunes, pick one. It's all those places. I laugh when I think about that because I was on iTunes before the Beatles. I have no idea how that works out. I was getting iTunes checks before Paul McCartney was getting them. Paul McCartney probably doesn't even know he's getting them. And there's CDs and all of that, but I appreciate you coming out and supporting people like me and allowing me to just continue to do this. The harp is, of all the instruments I play, and there's a bunch that I do that you don't see when I travel. I just kind of mess around at home with them. This is my favorite. This is my favorite. I think if you listen to it for a while, you understand why. This is the one that I play for me when the house is dark and quiet, and it's just me and the cat that my son left there 12 years ago. He's not coming back for it. This is the one that I play for myself. So I'm going to play two more on the harp. The first one is, it's a beautiful Christmas thing, and it lends itself really interestingly to the instrument, musically and rhythmically. So I worked it out, and I stuck it out here, and it just kind of fits very nicely. The last one I will play after that is an old Robert Byrd's tune that it turns up at New Year's Eve a lot. And then if you go to Scotland and you play it in the sessions over there, and I have done that, it always gets played at the end of the sessions over there. So it's a good thing for me to finish the session here in your little town of Vermont. So thank you all for coming out today. And may God bless you all.
have some refreshments. We have coffee and special Christmas treats and whatnot, so help yourself. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.